All right, welcome back to the Believe in Jets podcast. First time doing this live on YouTube. So if you are on YouTube, check this out. Check us out. I posted the links on Instagram and Twitter. The New York Jets have fired Robert Saleh, and that's why we're doing this. So my name is Rami Lavi. It's Believe in Jets podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. We'll get into some of the stuff coming up, but this is crazy. This is shocking. And my story behind this, and the reason why it's almost 4 p.m. and it's the first time I'm reacting to this, is because in typical fashion, so I'll set the stage. So Saturday night, I work the overnight at WFAN. If you don't know, I am a producer at WFAN. I've hosted a couple times, but producer at WFAN. And I produced the overnight on WFAN on Saturday night. And okay, regular, pretty typical stuff, produce the overnight, come home. And then I was found out that they needed me to work on the Mets game on the digital side on Monday or Sunday, rather. Sorry, the Mets game was Sunday. So I worked the Mets game. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. Basically slept for 3 hours on Sunday. Then I get called into the overnight Sunday night. They asked me if I could come in a couple hours early. So then I work again the overnight Sunday night. And then I had to come home and then also work the Yankee game last night. And then in the middle of the Yankee game, they call me into a third consecutive overnight, which again, I'm totally cool with. I love every opportunity I get at WFAN, but I'm now exhausted. I'm running on 6 hours of sleep in 3 days. And I get home and I actually had some stuff to do. I was running errands. I was in the car. I was driving around. I went and got breakfast from Dunkin'. The whole thing. I was awake probably till about 10:30 in the morning. And I was expecting, and I even said this, I think I said this to Giannotti on my way out. I was like, best thing that could happen for you. You talk about the Yankees for 20 minutes, and then Devontae Adams gets traded to the Jets. That's the best thing that could happen for you, is that there's news that's Jets related this morning. And he's like, haha, yeah, that's funny. And then we moved on. And I was like, okay, that's what's going to happen. Maybe Devontae Adams gets traded. So I'm waiting for the Devontae Adams trade to happen. And that's why I didn't go to sleep. And then I go to sleep at about 10:30, and I found out later that at 10:15, Robert Saleh was fired, and my phone was blowing up. And the first text I saw, which is unbelievable, and it's perfect how the world lines up, but a guy who, if you listen to the open of this podcast, is you could hear his voice, and I retweeted and talked about as actually the most the Jets fan that I respect most, the Jets fan who, when I think of Jets fans, and I think this person has the best finger on the pulse of the franchise. And we had a conversation a couple days ago, and his name is Mike Fliegelman. Fleegs, he's a producer at WFAN. He's awesome. And he said a couple days ago to me and C-Mac, Chris McMonagle, who hosts the overnight, he said, things are getting dysfunctional in the building. And so, I wouldn't cross my fingers. Things could happen. And I never thought Woody Johnson would fire a head coach in regular season. And as we get into it, and then the first text I see is, told you guys things recently got very ugly in the building. Ha. And that was to me and Chris this morning, or technically this afternoon by the time he said it. It's unbelievable. I'm shocked. I've never been this shocked about a head coach firing, and yet it 1000% needed to happen. I was apathetic towards the New York Jets. I was feeling like on Sunday after the game in London, I was like, nothing's going to change, because nothing has changed. And this is what you talk about. When you go into a London game and you say, oh, we just did the same thing we did last time, because last time this is how we traveled. We traveled later in the week, so we're traveling later in the week this time. When you say things like that, when there's clearly no adjustments, when you're clearly not making any changes because this is how things were done in the past, it's insane. You have to make adjustments. You have to self-coach as a head coach. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, here's what I'm doing right. Here's what I'm doing wrong. And Robert Saleh was never able to do it. Aaron Rodgers throws 3 terrible interceptions in that game. Did you see Robert Saleh once go over to him and say a word to him? I'm not saying you have to ream out Aaron Rodgers. He's a freaking Hall of Fame quarterback. What's it going to do? Well, people said, oh, it's different than Bill Belichick. He grew up with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was there before he was Tom Brady. No. But Bruce Arians didn't have a great relationship with Brady, certainly. But he would get on the sideline, get in Tom Brady's face. The biggest difference, and this is 100% true, if the New York Jets had a different coach right now, if you look at Brian Daboll, for example, the other coach in New York, if the New York Jets had Brian Daboll right now, wouldn't they be 4-1? And to think that the Jets were so close to being 4-1 without it. They could have overcome all the problems of Robert Saleh, but that's the point exactly. Why do we have to overcome the head coach? The Jets could have overcome the head coach. The Jets could have won some of these games despite the head coach, but why do we have to overcome our head coach? Why do we have to win despite the head coach? Comment below what your thoughts on, by the way, just everyone who's in here right now. This is mind-boggling. I want to hear from you guys what you think, because the New York Jets, in a shocking move, and the way the reports are going down with, he came into the building this morning. He had no idea he was being fired, and Christopher and Woody Johnson sat him down and said, "You're out of a job." And apparently he had to be escorted out by security, which now there's people refuting that report. But my God, this is unbelievable. This is unprecedented for the New York Jets. The last time they fired a head coach in season, I think, was 1974. It's just unbelievable stuff. Real quick, if you want the full whatever BS that Woody Johnson's statement that he put out. This morning, I informed Robert Saleh that he will no longer serve as the head coach of the Jets. I thanked him for his hard work these past 3.5 years and wished him and his family well moving forward. This was not an easy decision, but we are not where we should be given our expectations, and I believe now is the best time for us to move in a different direction. No, it's not. It's not the best time, Woody. You should have moved on in the offseason. Robert Saleh is 20-36 as the Jets head coach. You should have moved on months ago. You should have moved on. Oh, but he got a mulligan. And this is what I yelled and screamed about. This is what I yelled and screamed about after the Denver game. It was, they just never made a move. It made no sense. You had to move on from this head coach. And like I said, I was apathetic after the game because nothing's going to change as long as this guy's the head coach. So maybe the defense will overcome. Maybe Robert Saleh maybe Aaron Rodgers is so great he'll overcome. But to think that this head coach was going to, he didn't give you anything. You can't have a head coach that doesn't bring anything to the table. You can't have a head coach where everything you do has to overcome him being so awful. He gives you nothing positive and only negative. In their first, by the way, in 2023 with Zach Wilson, because Robert Saleh's big thing was, well, I never had the quarterback. So this is what he said. In 2023 with Zach Wilson, they started the season 2-3, scored 93 points in the first 5 games. This year, 93 points. They're 2-3. The offense was certainly part of the problem. Aaron Rodgers, certainly part of the problem. I'm not taking any blame away from Hackett. And the reports were that Saleh was ready to fire Hackett this morning when he came into the building. And Aaron Rodgers had nothing to do with this decision. Joe Douglas had nothing to do with this decision. And that's the bottom line, too. Woody Johnson is the only one who makes decisions around here. And the problem is that as long as Woody Johnson is making the decisions around here, I don't think the Jets will be very good. But this is the first time that he's actually shown a willingness to make a change, that he's shown a willingness to, okay, this is not working. I need to do something. It was CBS Sports who reported that that Saleh was considering firing Nathaniel Hackett when he came in the building this morning. Just a timeline for you. At 9:38, I screenshotted something from Twitter. So I was still awake then. It's actually crazy. But look, he would have been fired by any other team in the NFL. 1976 was the last time the Jets fired a head coach in season. But my God, you cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And Robert Saleh was clearly not the guy. Robert Saleh showed you time and time again that in order to win with him, you had to overcome him. How many times, and I tweeted this out on Monday, Sauce Gardner on social media tweeting about different things. How many times do we have to see the players tweeting on social media before they get disciplined? Oh, but he's a player's head coach. No, you're a camp counselor. There's a difference between loving you and respecting you and just taking advantage of you. Robert Saleh was taken advantage of. The New York Jets players loved and respected Rex Ryan. They took advantage of Robert Saleh. I see in here somebody wrote, who will the next head coach be? All right. Well, good thing we have our friends at BetOnline for this, because BetOnline is your number one spot to get all your info, stats, news, in-game betting, everything you want. You go to betonline.com. BetOnline, the game starts here. That's a quick shout out, BetOnline, for sponsoring the podcast. They have the odds up as who will be the next head coach of the New York Jets. They have Bill Belichick at 2-1, Mike Vrabel at 5-1, Ben Johnson 6-1, and then Bobby Slowick 8-1, Todd Monken 10-1. So a couple of guys, Joe Brady 11-1. Okay. And the list goes on and on. Let me see if there's any names that I really like. Cliff Kingsbury, who's done a great job, obviously, this year. I don't see Rex Ryan on this list. And I know a lot of Jet fans are probably clamoring for Rex Ryan. Look, I grew up with Rex Ryan. Bilal was drafted by Rex Ryan, who co-hosts this podcast with me. If you guys don't know, you can like, subscribe, share the podcast. Bilal Powell hosts it with me. We do a great job together, in my personal opinion. And Bilal's awesome. He loves Rex, and a lot of Jet fans and players love Rex, but I don't think it's happening at this point. I think they've moved on, and it's not coming back. Jeff Ulbrich is on this list to remain on as the head coach after he will be the interim head coach here. We'll talk about Ulbrich in a second and what he might bring to the table and what we might see differently against Buffalo, because I thought that the Jets, if they made a decision, it would be after losing to Buffalo. The fact that they made a decision now, again, shocking to me. I thought they would wait till they lost to Buffalo. Didn't happen. Didn't get that grace. And I'm so happy they didn't, because what was the point? What were we waiting for? And this is why I said they should have fired him before the season started, because this was inevitable. Robert Saleh was clearly not the guy. He doesn't have to show you over and over and over again that he's clearly not the guy. So they made a move, and it was the right move, although the timing of it is stupid, but it was the right move. Belichick at 2-1 is just, I mean, I would love to see Bill Belichick as the head coach of the New York Jets. And Bilal and I talked about this on the podcast, and we've been talking about this for years. Like, I thought it would happen in the offseason, but if Vrabel and Belichick are the top two options, doesn't that tell you that maybe they should have done it in the freaking offseason when those guys were available to come in? All right, I said I was going to read some of the comments, so if you have comments, right below here. They have the game that decides who is top of the division this week, and fired the head coach this week. I assume that's supposed to be a question mark from Brandon. Yeah, they have the game. This is why, because so many people thought, oh, we'll fire him after. If they lose to Buffalo, they'll fire him. You couldn't afford to lose to Buffalo. You put yourself in a situation where you could not afford. And do you really think, Brandon, and ask yourself this, do you really think that the Jets are better off just because Saleh's been there for 3.5 years, that they're better off with Robert Saleh as the head coach over Jeff Ulbrich on Sunday or Monday night against Buffalo? I don't think they're better off. I don't think it makes a big difference. I really don't. I don't think there's a negative effect from firing your head coach out. I think actually this helps. Maybe the players will show up ready. Maybe they'll be disciplined. How many times do you have to see the same thing over and over and over again? I talked about it last episode. They went down 20-3 against a terrible, terrible Falcons team because they traveled on Thursday and were hungover. And then I have to hear Connor Hughes talking about how the players are not hungover. My God. Maybe hungover too, but jet lag. And then I have to hear Connor Hughes talking about how the players were jet lagged because they flew in late again. How does that happen? Because we did it last time. Don't you learn from your mistakes from last time? And Robert Saleh never learned from his mistakes. And him just sitting there on the sideline, same face the entire time, just like this. That's all we get from him. What does he do? Giannotti on the morning show on WFAN says it best. He just loiters. He walks around. He doesn't say a word to anyone. You don't see him talking to anyone. He doesn't call the defense. He doesn't call the offense. He never goes over to the players. Occasionally, he'll get fired up and run down the sideline and high five. What does he do? What positive does Robert Saleh bring to this team? If the New York Jets season spirals out of control because they fired Robert Saleh, I'll admit, hand up, I was wrong, but I would be shocked if that happens. The Jets season is not falling apart because they fired Robert Saleh. The Jets season starts today, and that's the biggest thing. Like I said, I was apathetic. I just was like, okay, nothing's changing with this team. I thought they weren't going to make a move, and you heard me talk about it with Bilal. You heard me talk about it with Antoine. Until this team was 2-7, something like that, till it was too late, they weren't going to make a move on Robert Saleh. This is, while the timing is moronic that it happened now and it didn't happen 8 months ago, again, the sooner the better. So they fired Robert Saleh. They made the right decision. There was no reason to push it off any further because this head coach is a terrible head coach. He's proven that time and time again. You are what your record says you are. He was 20-36. The same lame excuses, the same penalties, the same players talking in the social media without any consequence. At some point, there has to be consequence. And Aaron Rodgers, I guess he wasn't on McAfee today. I haven't heard him talk about this. Apparently, it wasn't his decision. Aaron Rodgers was not part of this decision. Apparently, it wasn't part of Joe Douglas's decision. It was Woody Johnson's decision and Woody Johnson's decision alone. And Woody Johnson, by the way, being that it was his decision alone, it makes sense. Because he's headed towards a rebuild. He sees where this season is headed. So for him, it's like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? We keep losing and we have to rebuild anyway. And that's my point. Like, Robert Saleh wasn't saving the season. So you might as well make the move sooner rather than later. See what else you have. Jeff Ulbrich is a guy who at least is going to have some sort of fire. He's at least going to have some accountability on the sideline where he's getting in guys' faces. Someone down here, Israel, says, what's with the Rodgers is coach killer call? He had 2 coaches in Green Bay. Now, yeah, so people are saying, oh, Rodgers, coach killer, classic Aaron Rodgers, he's a coach killer. That's not true. First of all, I don't believe Rodgers had nothing to do with this. I'm sure he didn't love Robert Saleh. It seemed like he didn't love Robert Saleh, right? The little shove, obviously the talking back and forth in the media in the press conference last week. Of course, he goes on McAfee. I love Robert. We text a lot. Okay. Robert Saleh, by all accounts, by the way, great person. Good hang, good dude. Everyone says that Robert Saleh is actually, people who meet Robert Saleh love Robert Saleh. Bilal's talked to Robert Saleh a bunch. I'm sure he's a decent human being. And by the way, I wouldn't be shocked if San Francisco got him on the staff tomorrow as some sort of defensive whatever. His defense was solid. But he's not a good head coach. And the idea, to answer your question, that Aaron Rodgers is some sort of coach killer. Aaron Rodgers is not a coach killer. He had 2 coaches, like you said, in Green Bay the entire time. He had McCarthy and he had LaFleur, and that's it. This is the first time an Aaron Rodgers coach has been fired midseason. And I'm curious to see how Aaron Rodgers reacts to that. I don't think it'll change anything for Aaron Rodgers. But if anything, it'll be a little better. I want a coach who at least has the balls show up and get in Rodgers' face. I don't care that he's the 40-year-old Hall of Famer. I don't care that he was brought to be here as the savior of the franchise. You're the head coach. You're not supposed to look at him. I'm a Jet fan. I can look at Aaron Rodgers as the savior of the franchise. Robert Saleh, the head coach, you can't look at Aaron Rodgers as the savior of the franchise. That's pathetic. And that's how we looked at Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Aaron, what a throw, man. Oh, Aaron. And then when he makes a mistake, you like hide from him. Oh, I'm scared of Aaron Rodgers. You're the head coach. Go over to him. That was a terrible interception. How do you not see Van Ginkel there? How do you throw it over the safety over the middle? Aaron Rodgers was terrible in the game on Sunday. Aaron Rodgers is one of the main reasons they lost on Sunday, but he's also one of the main reasons why they almost overcame everything that Robert Saleh did and almost won that football game. If the Jets would have won that football game, it would have been entirely solely because of Aaron Rodgers. And you could say but Jeff Ulbrich's defense and Robert Saleh's defense too. But it's the same thing. They were down 20-3. Last time they went to London, they decided to do things the same way. And this time they were down 17-0. How many times does it take to learn from your mistakes? If you can't learn from your mistakes, then clearly Robert Saleh never was. Do you think the Jets did this with intention to get a specific coach, Ethan? Not this year, I don't think. I think Jeff Ulbrich is going to remain the head coach for the remainder of the year. I don't know what could change that. If things are going terribly, I still think that there could be a decision to be made, and it's going to be Jeff Ulbrich's decision to make. And what a tough spot he's in. Day one, Woody Johnson told the media, day one of your tenure, it's your decision now. You have to decide on whether you want to fire Rodgers' guy, Nate Hackett. And that's another thing. I'm so happy that it's Jeff Ulbrich and not Nathaniel Hackett. And clearly Woody Johnson finally was seeing what people were saying online, was seeing what the fans are saying online. Listen, you know what they say, if you listen to the fans, you'll sit with the fans. Well, he owns the team, and he's going to listen to the fans. But again, you had to do something. I don't think there's a specific head coach out there that I don't even know who takes this right now. I guess if you're Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel, you're like, yeah, I'm sitting at home. I might as well take a job. But it was just so many things, one thing after another. It was too much to overcome for Robert Saleh. And so the Jets made a move despite the timing of it. And the reason I say the timing sucked is because it should have happened 8 months ago. But despite the timing of it not being great, it was the right decision. The Jets had to make a move. If you have any other questions, comment below. Again, Believe in Jets podcast, breaking news. And this is, again, for most people, it's about 6 hours old. The Jets fire Robert Saleh. But for me, I was sleeping and my phone was blowing up. One of those moments that I'll never forget, because just seeing everyone on, it's just crazy. Like just seeing everyone on here and everyone's reaction. It's just kind of hilarious that this happened the way it did. So, I mean, again, texts from everyone because the Jets made a huge move. And you know what? Usually people text me when the Jets do something moronic. Usually people text me when the Jets lose a game to Denver 10-9. That's when I get the texts. When Aaron Rodgers throws a pick six, I get a million texts. So this is better than that. This is better than that. And hopefully Jeff Ulbrich, we don't know what he is as a head coach, but we know it can't be worse than what Aaron Rodgers was. I guarantee, than what Robert Saleh was. I guarantee you it can't be worse. By the way, you see this hat I'm wearing? I just want to shout out real quick before we talk a little bit more Jets. Shout out to our partner at Melin, MELIN.com. They do great work for us and with us, and they sent me this hat that looks incredible. It's durable, long lasting, no sweat stains, comfortable, great material. It's breathable on top and in the back, but it's also strong and structured, so it doesn't lose its shape. I could throw it in the washing machine if I ever did feel like it was getting dirty, but why would I ever feel that way? I don't take it off my head. It stays on 24/7. It's now a fixture. I was sleeping in this hat when Robert Saleh got fired. So go to melin.com, MELIN.com to get your hat today. The best hats in the game. You won't want to wear any other hat after you wear this. Again, instant reaction for me. For some people, they were awake when this happened. Most people were awake, but I was working an overnight at WFAN, was hanging around, and then was like, you know what? Nah, nothing's happening with the Jets. They're not trading for Davante Adams. I guess I'll take a quick nap, and when I wake up, we'll see what happens. And I literally, and I do this every time as I'm falling asleep. That's funny. I see someone in the comments. Rodgers threw those picks to get Robert Saleh fired. You know what? Good job, Aaron Rodgers. If that's what it took, if Rodgers said, hey, if I just play terribly for 2 games here, which he did for 2 games, Denver and obviously against Minnesota, if I play awful for 2 games, maybe it'll be enough to get Robert Saleh fired. Great, because Robert Saleh should have been fired, and he was. It was the right decision. Unfortunately, 8 months too late, and now the Jets have to salvage the season. This is when you're all in, when it's 1 year to be all in, you cannot waste time messing around. And I talked about this with the Yankees a lot because Juan Soto, right? This is the 1 year we have Juan Soto and Aaron Judge together. We don't know if we have them beyond this year. There's no time to mess around. We have to have a sense of urgency. The Jets had to have a sense of urgency. 2-3, 5 games in, same total number of points that they had last year with Zach Wilson. Maybe that's not on Saleh. Maybe that's on Aaron Rodgers. Maybe that's on Nate Hackett. All those things can be true. Still, the one constant from the moment Saleh showed up here was no matter how much talent he had, he was a terrible head coach. The team was underprepared. The team made the same penalties. The team made excuses in media. He was 20-36 as the head coach of the New York Jets, one of the worst head coaches. And how great his career as the New York Jets head coach, his book ended with my guy. He loses to Sam Darnold, his first ever game as Jets head coach, loses to Sam Darnold against Carolina. His last ever game as the Jets head coach, he loses to Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. I love it. Oh man, that's great. Look, this does give me a little bit more life as a Jet fan, because watching these games, I was gonna get to the point where it's just like, my God, I don't. If they lost to Buffalo, it's just gonna be like, all right, I don't know, 2-4. They could easily get to 2-7 before things turn around. The season's over. It was just gonna get worse. It wasn't gonna get better, and I was getting tired of it. I was just I was hate watching the team. It wasn't even about like I wasn't upset anymore. I was just like mindless. I was just like, all right, whatever. That's the worst way to be. You don't want to feel, like I said so many times already, apathetic. You don't want to feel just like disinterested. And that's how I was getting towards with the Jets. And now I'm bought in a little bit more. Now I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. There's something new. There's something to watch. And this is what the Jets do. They pull you back in, baby. Just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in. How does this affect a Davante Adams trade? Does he look at the dysfunction and say, hey, I don't want to be there? I don't know. It's still Aaron Rodgers, still Nate Hackett. So in some senses, nothing changes for him, right? Theoretically, nothing should change for Davante Adams. So could there be a Davante Adams trade coming? I still think so. I think that's Joe Douglas's call. And we saw Woody Johnson. And of course, Woody Johnson's a moron. So him saying, oh, look, Hassan Reddick, show up now. As if it was Robert Saleh was the reason Hassan Reddick wasn't showing up. I mean, Woody's got to keep his mouth shut. That's that. And he's just, I don't think the Jets will ever win with Woody as the owner, but maybe he's changing a little bit. But still, he's clearly not giving the franchise over to the GM and the head coach because he made this decision. He went over the GM and he wasn't. By the way, guess who hired the head coach? Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson was the one who hired the head coach. It's not like this was Joe Douglas's hire and now Woody went and fired him. So Woody can blame everyone around him. Look in the mirror. I talked about with Saleh, zero accountability. Look in the mirror, Woody Johnson. This is on you. This mess that we have right now is on Woody Johnson. And I'm shocked. I mean, Robert Saleh out before Doug Peterson. Robert Saleh out before Zach Taylor. Insane. Really crazy. And first head coach fired on the season. And I'm like, again, I'm not shocked because I think that it should have happened 8 months ago. But at the same time, the Jets never do this. And so it is surprising. We'll see what Jeff Ulbrich brings. It's his defense, right? I don't see the defense being worse. Maybe he has Sauce travel a little bit. Maybe he runs some blitz schemes a little bit. And maybe Jeff Ulbrich knew that he was waiting in the wings because he was offered a position to go back to San Francisco. Why wouldn't you want to be with that great organization? Instead, he decided to stay with the Jets. So maybe he knew that a move theoretically was coming. All that said, it's just a wild, wild day in Jets land. I'll have more thoughts. I'll talk to Antoine Staley. I'll talk to Bilal Powell. Thursday, I think Bilal is going to come back on the show, and we'll talk to him. And we'll see if we could talk to anyone else. But wild stuff. This is, again, the dysfunction of the New York Jets is supreme. I mean, it's just, they are better at being dysfunctional than any other franchise is good at doing what they do. The New York Jets are the kings of being the most dysfunctional franchise in sports. So congrats, New York Jets. Your dysfunction just got your head coach fired. Again, mostly on him. But it happened at the worst time because you decided not to do it 8 months ago. And everyone knew when they didn't fire him 8 months ago, and I said this on the podcast, they'll never win with Robert Saleh. So maybe now there's a chance for them to win because Robert Saleh is gone as the head coach of the New York Jets. So until next time, like, subscribe, share the podcast. I'll throw a link down there, I guess, for the podcast feed because you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Believe in Jets. My name is Rami Lavi. Thank you all for watching, listening. Appreciate you all. See ya.